Hi, this is Metta Spencer, and this is Sunday, October the 29th, 2023. So it's time for a new Global Town Hall, since this is the last Sunday in October. So welcome, everybody, and I particularly want to say hello to Karen and Bernhard, because you've been sitting here about minutes waiting for me to open this thing, and I was powdering my face. So I wasn't going to let you in until I got my face powdered. And now you're all here, and I want to say hello. Karen and Bernhard, I understand you're from Germany. So why don't you start things off by telling us a little bit who you are and how you found us.
Oh, yes, kannst du reden.
Well, we got an email. You told us about this. We had a very good friend in Toronto who was very engaged in earth care, and in Germany we joined the earth care organization, the earth care group of Quakers. And so I thought maybe this evening we try to hear what you are doing.
Good. Well, this is a global town hall, so you'll meet some people from all over the world. And I'm glad that you found this. Probably my assistant sent out invitations. I know he sent to more people than usual. He had a whole list of organizations. So we probably have some newcomers today, and I'm glad to welcome you. And let's see, here's somebody else I don't think I've met before. Must be Patrick Chun. Is that right? Hello, Patrick.
Hi, thank you, Metta. I got an email from a friend of yours, Lloyd Halferty from Ontario. He runs a group called the Unity Net, and I'm part of the member. And I also volunteer for another group called the World Civility Index. And here I'm just trying to learn. Thank you so much.
Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about the Unity, whatever it is? I know that Lloyd has mentioned it before and wanted to get me involved, but I'm too busy. So, but I'm eager to hear what you folks do. What's your game?
Well, we're trying to solve a world problem. And there are so many problems, but about 12 years ago, this group of engineers and trainers, they talk about what is the main problem, what is the one root cause that we can do. So they invented something called the World Civility Index that talks about manners, talks about people dealing with one another. How can we care for one another and so on? That's the root cause of all evil, if you may. And so that's what we have been doing. We help companies in measuring company culture, in how well people can actually have empathy for one another and taking care of one another in that regard.
Well, that sounds wonderful. It sounds like something everybody would applaud and everybody would live by until they get mad. And when I get mad, the game is completely changed. I'm not a very constructive peace person, so, and I think that's pretty much the way it is, when we feel our cause is righteous and we're very indignant by it, it's pretty hard to be civil. Anyway, I'm glad that you're trying to straighten us all out, and maybe you'll come away with a better diagnosis of what needs to be done to fix this before the day is over. Hello. Let's see. I see that Paul Werbos is here. I want to say hi to Paul. How are you, Paul?
Hi, okay.
Paul, you just sent me a cute joke. I don't know whether it was meant as a joke, but why don't you repeat what you heard at the Quaker meeting today?
Yeah, we were meditating on the very difficult question. How can you define or imagine a sustainable two-state solution? What could a two-state solution look like? And the voice came, oh, We know what a two-state solution is. It's Schrodinger's cat. The only problem is you don't know whether you're alive or dead at the end, but, well, it's a two-state solution.
Well, that's true, but we're not in the position of the cat. I mean, I wonder what the cat's point of view is. You know, we always talk about what it's like to open the box.
But to be perfectly honest, there is new science here. It's like the round earth. We all know it who are at the frontier, but it hasn't caught on to the rest of the world yet. We are macroscopic Schrodinger cats. We are cats like that.
Okay. I think you believe in the multi-world solution, right? Isn't that the answer to Schrodinger's cat? That there are many worlds, many universes?
Lately, there's a guy named David Deutsch in Oxford who has done a brilliant job of explaining the idea, but even his colleague Penrose doesn't understand what he's saying. It looks transparent to me, but the world seems to have troubles with it.
I think I have
And
trouble.
in the end, I don't believe it's the ultimate truth. I think it's a great approximation. When we build technology today, Deutsch's concepts have lots of potential to change the world in a good way or a bad way. But I can see a level deeper than that.
Okay. Well, maybe we'll come back to that. If I'm not sure whether this audience is up for discussing Schrodinger's cat today, but we may have some. I know at least
We have
one.
a Dyson here.
One other
We have a Dyson, for God's sake.
Dyson is a different. This is Rose Dyson, not Freeman. So.
Okay.
So hold your horses. Anyway, Derek Paul is here and Peter Brogdon is here, and I think they can both talk physics to you if they want to. Maybe even Patrick Chun, who knows? So who else do I need to greet? I want to say hi to Marilyn Krieger and check out how the cats in California are doing, the wild cats.
Hi, yes. So, well, let me see what is new. Well, the usual thing. I mean, in the mountains where I live, there's only about 40 to 50 of mountain lions, but a lot of people think there are more because their cameras are catching the same ones over and over. So it's a bit controversial. Right now, I'm in the process of writing 2 articles. One of them is focused on how how COVID and the pandemic affected where the wildlife went before COVID, during, and after. So I've been gathering every study that I can find and comparing them. And it's very interesting.
Hold on. Now, are you saying that your cats got COVID, or do any of the animals catch it?
No, what happened when COVID happened, people going out into the wild, recreating or whatever you call it in the wild, I mean, on the trails changed. There was a time in California anywhere where everybody was told not to go out of their homes. So there was no traffic. So some of there are some instances of wildlife coming more into the cities. But what happens out in the wild is very interesting. Instead of what happens, let me see how to phrase this. When there are more people, the animals expand their territory. When there are less, they decrease it. And the reason why for the pumas anyway, and for other predators is that their food, venison, deer, don't have to range farther away from people. And the predators follow their food. So what happens is that because of the expenditure of energy, the deer have a tendency to stay within a smaller area. And so the predators stay within a smaller area. But then when people after COVID started coming out and walking again, and they're trying to expand the trails, the mountain lions the deer, they're expanding their territories to avoid people. Does that make sense? I don't know if I'm explaining it correctly or explaining it clearly, I should say.
Well, let's see if
So,
anybody
anyway.
else has any thoughts about it. I mean, I'm not the only one here. Somebody have some thoughts about mountain lions in California and where they should and shouldn't live?
I'm sorry, what's the question? I couldn't hear you, Meta.
I was just asking if anybody else had any thoughts about it, because you asked if it makes sense to me. Well, I don't know, maybe, but maybe it makes some sense to somebody else. But anyway, okay. Well, we'll think about it further, Marilyn. Thank you. Let's see, who else is here? I know that Derek Paul came in for a second, but he seems to have popped off again. I don't know what's the matter, his connection. Here's Rose Dyson. Hello, Rose. How's everything?
Gotcha.
Rose.
Well, to pick up on your last discussion about the mountain lion, the pumas, I'm just wondering how different their habits are from other wildlife. The bears, for example, that are a real problem in Vancouver, West Coast, but further up. And having recently attacked joggers. Do pumas keep their distance from people? It's not clear to me why they would widen their range if people were out walking. Is this, do they ever attack people?
Yeah, they do. They do everything they can to avoid people. I mean, there are circumstances where, like, they feel if they have cubs, perhaps a person is between their baby and themselves. They may start to act aggressively, but as a whole, they definitely do everything they can to avoid people. I have lots of videos of mountain lions walking, and then and about 2 minutes later, a person coming into the same area, and the mountain lion is over somewhere else, and the person doesn't even know, waiting for those people to go by, and then will come back to continue their walk. They do everything they can to avoid people. We're considered.
But you say they do sometimes attack people. I mean, certainly we've heard about that. Why would they attack?
Yeah, if rare, very rare. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
what leads them to attack?
What's what?
What might motivate them to attack a human?
Well, so for instance, if you have a child and the child is running and is not near their person, near their adult, a mountain lion occasionally may see a child as prey because they see the movement. So you always have to keep children with you. That's not a common thing, but that's a rare occasion. Mm-hmm. Also, again, if a puma sees a human as a threat, if they're near their babies, if a female, it's a maternal instinct. Okay, all animals have that. Mm-hmm. You know, another reason, no, they're not going to seek out people and attack them. They don't do that. They avoid them. There's very few incidents of pumas attacking people. Recently, actually, in the last week, there was a case where a mountain lion went after a dog, and the person intervened, and the person got scratched and bitten. And so there's an example with a person intervening. Of course, you don't want your dog to get killed. Mm-hmm. So, but anyway, so that's another situation.
Well, thank you. Now we're real smart about our animals this week. I don't know where Bill is, but I expect to hear about foxes when he comes along. We have two newcomers here. We have Andrei Kameshikov in Kiev, Ukraine, and we have Alan Haber in, I believe, Ann Arbor. Is that right? I'm going to call on Andrei because we certainly want to know. We want a posting, an update, briefing on the war that people are forgetting about. You know, you have dropped off our radar, Andrei.
True. Unfortunately, that's the way I guess human minds work. You know, the war is still.
We can't hear you very well. Can you get close to your mic?
Hello? You hear me better now?
Not well, but better.
Okay, well, what I'm saying is that's true because I guess that's the human mind, you know, after stops being news, people stop paying much attention to it. The war is still full sway, you know, there are hundreds of people, if not thousands, being killed every day. But
Well, I know it's not just that we're tired of hearing you guys, that you're getting an old story, but it's that your war has been preempted by a new war, and everybody seems to be more interested in the situation between Israel and Gaza.
yes, I know, but you know, unfortunately, I just get a feeling that we are in this global trend.
Listen, guys, I can barely hear him. Can you folks hear him make it out what he's saying?
Let me
Is
try.
everybody okay with him?
I can hear.
Can you? Okay, keep going then, Andre. But just yell.
Hello, do you hear me better now?
Much
Much
better.
better.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, good. Sometimes it helps, sometimes it doesn't. I hope it helps this time. I first of all want to say that I don't have much time, only about half an hour, so I'm happy to join you all.
Mhm. Okay.
And just commenting on what we were discussing, yes, I understand, you know, everybody's focused on the new events right now, and the old events don't seem to be as important, or, you know, kind of people, I guess that's just human attention, you know. And there are many
Now,
other
Randy,
wars happening in the world.
Tell us how the war is going. If you were on the front lines, what would we be seeing today?
We would be seeing a slightly decreased version of the Western Front of World War I in something like 1916 or 15. It's old style trench warfare, very much like the classical Western Front of World War I. It's amazing how many parallels you find. It doesn't look like World War II anymore. It looks like World War I. You know, people sitting in trenches and trying to kill each other.
Yeah.
Mostly
we hear about all this, these artillery, you know, fancy artillery guns that I guess the U.S. has finally shipped, and they're able to shoot farther. But we hear about the delivery of this stuff, but I haven't heard about any of it being used. I mean, if put it crudely, who's winning this war, if anybody?
Right now, it's pretty much a stalemate. That's why it says it's like 1915, 1916, you know, 1917. World War I style Western Front. People stuck in trenches and trying to kill each other. And most casualties are by artillery fire, by drones. You don't see any major troop advancements one or the other way like you saw during World War II. It's not World War II, it's World War I in a sense, you know. You have rockets instead of dirigibles, you know, instead of Zeppelins flying around, but it's basically doing the same thing, you know. It would take a Zeppelin.
Everybody, you can take a crack at asking Andre what you will, because he's only going to be here half an hour. So, what would you, if you'd like to ask him a question, feel free.
I'm just wondering how the drones make a difference, if any, in the war. And I mean, they didn't have drones in World War I. What do they do that's different, if anything?
Well, they are a major factor in the war, but the thing is, both sides have them. So, you know, it doesn't work in one or another balance. It doesn't change the balance. Both sides use drones. Both sides rely on drones. What drones really led to is that there is much more intelligence. You can't really concentrate troops much. You can't, build up lots of troops and then try to break through the lines and, advance for a long period of time, because you simply can't concentrate troops because your enemy knows about any troop concentration in advance. So, you're basically stuck with people in trenches. So in a sense, it's kind of a reverse from what, people could see 50, 60, 70, 80 years ago, when you had massive movements. You had this Blitzkrieg or Bewegungskrieg as a war of movements, and, tank columns going back and forth, circling the enemy and so forth. You don't see any of that now. You see classical World War I trench warfare, only with new types of equipment. But the types of equipment, they're very similar. Both sides have similar stuff. So, some have advantage on one side or the other, technologically, but it doesn't make really much of a difference. So, people are sitting in trenches and trying to kill each other, and very little changes. Every now and then, I live in Kyiv, so of course I get the Ukrainian side that says, "Oh, our troops successfully advanced another 200 meters," something like that.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else want to ask Andre some questions? One of the things I should say that Andre has been doing is contacting Russian emigres, especially, I gather, men who left to keep from having to be mobilized and sent to the fight. And I don't know whether you're making any progress with that, but it's a cause that's dear to my heart, to try to see what can be done to communicate with the people in Russia through the people who are outside Russia, who still are in touch with their families and so on. What's the status of your work on that?
That's exactly what I'm trying to do now. In fact, tomorrow I'm leaving for another long trip to all kinds of different places: Kazakhstan, Georgia, Poland, Lithuania, and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly to do that.
Mm-hmm.
It's moving along, but it's going very, 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 very difficult, because there are many, many obstacles, and there's very little support. We drafted a proposal. I don't know what the result is. Hopefully tomorrow we'll know, but it's not very likely that our proposal got supported. So
hold on, who drafted what? And
Nonviolence International is the NGO that I'm working with, that I've been basically linked to for over 30 years now. And so Nonviolence International put together a proposal to try to expand the work that I'm doing, and sent it to one foundation that supports initiatives involving Russia. The decision supposedly was made last week, but we don't know about it. Unfortunately, that's not good news, because I think if it would be a positive decision, they would probably let us know right away. But so I don't expect that. But tomorrow probably we'll call the foundation and just
what exactly are they proposing?
We're proposing.
We
are proposing a program that would engage people, Russian citizens that left to other countries because of the war, would train them and would try to engage them in becoming communicators, kind of professional communicators, to groups of people in Russia that they have some links to, members of like social networks and things like that, trying to spread the word out, trying to find a way to speak to those groups in Russia who are under the influence of government propaganda. I will say right away that there's probably 50 to 20% of the population in Russia who are more or less adequate, who more or less understand what's really going on. But they're silenced because, the regime is very repressive. It's basically a fascist state today. And so people don't really see any opportunity to influence much. But then there's probably another 60 to 70% of the population which are not necessarily supporters of the war, who don't like the war as such, but go along with it and don't see any other option. They kind of believe many of the fakes that they were told by the government. So it's not that they're enthusiastic or happy, but they look at the war as some kind of natural disaster like earthquake that you can't do anything about. And the idea is to find a way to communicate to those people. There are some hardliners who are really enthusiastic and supportive, but we're probably speaking about not more than 10 or 15%. So we don't care about them, but we're caring about the majority. And the question is, how do you reach them? Because there's lots of independent Russian language news on the internet, but the internet is something you can get any information you want if you look for it. If you're not interested in searching for it, then you don't get it. And the majority of the people today in Russia simply don't search for alternative information. So we need to find new ways of reaching them, not just the 15-20% that are already in opposition or already more or less understand what's really happening. And my idea is that the many hundreds of thousands of people who left Russia because of the war, because they don't want to be part of this, they are in relative safety in the countries where they moved to, relative, because it depends on every particular case, but they're certainly safer than their friends and relatives who remain in Russia. And they can speak to them. They can contact them. They can try to share information with them.
Unfortunately, my experience in talking with some of those people is that when they call home and talk to mom, she says she doesn't believe them.
That's true. And the big mistake is that after a few attempts, what people simply do is they either stop speaking to their acquaintances, or they continue speaking. Obviously they continue speaking to close relatives, but they just drop this topic. They don't discuss politics.
Yeah, that's
the big mistake. And that's the big mistake that people do, because they feel discouraged because their initial expectation is that they are able to prove to someone something to someone. The reality is that it's nearly impossible to prove to someone something, to say that, that would really change his view on things. It's very, very rare that can actually happen. But the mistake is that after being discouraged by the response they get, they simply drop the topic. The goal is not to prove something to someone. The goal is to become an independent source of information. So even if people don't believe you, even if they don't like what you say, they still hear you. That's the important thing. If we can still communicate, if we can still share our views, not expecting that people will believe us, or people will change their mind because of they've spoken to us. But we still can share the view. We're still doing a very important piece of work, because sooner or later, every person, or nearly every person in Russia, will be faced with a personal decision he needs to make. For one, this might be a decision to go or not to fight. For another, it might be a decision to encourage her son or her cousin or whoever, her brother, to go to fight or not. For someone else, it will be a decision to volunteer for some kind of work in support of the military or not. For someone else, it will be to find employment in the military factory or not. One way or another, different people will be involved. And the government will keep imposing more and more on ordinary people. And sooner or later, they'll start remembering if they're exposed to alternative information, to independent information, it will still have effect on their decisions.
Mhm.
Not
Yeah,
necessarily
I think
that
that
they'll
makes
agree
sense.
with it.
And you're planting a seed which may sprout some other time.
Exactly. The idea is to encourage people to plant these seeds, even if they don't see the expected result.
Yeah, good. Well, I think that's great. Now, look, I'm hogging the microphone here. I'd love to invite other people to chime in on this, or we'll go to a different topic if you prefer a different topic.
I
Anybody?
have another question.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, in talking to the people who are still in Russia, is there any concern for their safety, either on their part and why they might be denying the information or the seeds of truth or alternative information that you're offering them? I just wonder how you handle that component.
There is a concern, definitely. However, again, the goal is not to get people to agree with what I say or what other people say. The goal is to at least create a situation where they hear us.
Yes.
And they're not going to be prosecuted for simply hearing something. We don't want them to openly admit something. We just want them to hear, to receive the information.
Okay.
And so, that's not, I mean, theoretically, yeah, there might be some questions, but that's still relatively safe, I think.
Thank you so much, Andre. Anybody else here?
I have a quick question. It sounds like a really great project. And I'm wondering if there's a way to kind of help people tune into information sources that they could absorb over time, not just in one conversation, but whether it's social media or something like, a website. Is that something that you're helping people who are on the fence to find that kind of source?
There are many Russian language websites, and especially on YouTube, there are many, many programs. There's a lot. If you want to find information, you can find it. It's available. It's there. The question is that, the people that find that information are usually the people that already more or less understand what's going on.
Right.
And the other people, they're not, maybe, it's not very comfortable to find information about the terrible things that your country is doing in your name.
Mm-hmm.
So unless you have a certain political position, you're usually not even very interested in hearing this stuff, Even if you don't feel very good about what's happening, it's still uncomfortable. So
that has to do with people's sense of identity, right?
Yes.
So I wonder if there's, is that part of the challenge, is to help people form some alternative identity around, let's say, being Russian, but supporting peace or something along those lines?
Well, you can't say. Obviously, we're trying to contribute to that. Yeah. At this point, our objectives are still very, very modest. The idea is to be able to at least develop a model. How can we get some of these, we're speaking about many, many hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people who left the country. And if we can encourage at least a percent of that group of, these hundreds of thousands of people to become active communicators, to really, try to reach out to anyone they can. And that's, I think, important thing in itself. Mm-hmm. But we're still very far from that. We're just trying to kind of figure out a model how that can be done. And I'm not so sure it can be done. We've been running into all kinds of issues and all kinds of problems, and especially, without any substantial support for this. I'm honestly, I'm taking another trip. This is my third or fourth trip this year to many different countries to do that. And, you know, I'm doing that thanks to, you know, very, very, very minimal support that, you know, different concerned people were able to raise with my organization on Violence International, but, you know, without any single substantive grant to at least support this work. And what I want to do is to, you know, what I would like to do is I would like to, when I come to these different places, speaking to the Russian speakers there, when I see someone that's really capable of effectively communicating and really wants to make a difference, I want to tell him, you know, I know you just moved to a new country and it wasn't your choice. You were forced to immigrate. And you're facing all kinds of problems living in this place. And, you know, but you can really be effectively communicating with people in Russia. So, you know, here, you know, we can provide you with training and we can provide you maybe with some kind of stipend, you know, that would support you in your new location. And you could really focus on communication. That's what I would like to say. I can't say that now because there's no support for that. So I don't know.
You know, I wish, Andre, I mean, we don't have money, but
I know. I'm not complaining about. I'm just explaining the reality.
I know, but I mean, what I want to say is that I think every one of us here would love to be able to contribute in some way to what you're doing, except I don't think we can contribute financially. Is there any way in which our I don't think it would work, but you know, this Zoom link that I have in this YouTube channel, would be happy to have you use it if there's some way in which it could reach people, because all these people will be speaking Russian. Therefore, there's no point in my being involved at all speaking English. Is there any way in which a conversation among Russian speakers on a channel such as this would be of any value to anybody?
Well, I have a Zoom, you know, I use Zoom, I use other information, you know, these messenger services and so forth. So it's not a technical issue. And also my experience is that you really need to, the reason I spend so much time and effort and money traveling is that, you know, nothing can replace, you know, meeting people in person.
Yeah.
So I do certain things on Zoom, but to have any chance of getting this whole project off the ground, I need to personally, you know, it's going to be like my 4th trip to Georgia and Kazakhstan this year in a few days. So,
well,
you know,
God bless you. I mean, really, it's a wonderful project. And about the only thing that I think has much prospect of having any success for peace activists nowadays. This is a bleak time to be a peace activist. You can't really expect to accomplish much of anything, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, and this is a time, unfortunately, you know, in Ukraine where I live, which is suffering from the war, and yet people don't speak about peace. People want to hear about victory, not about peace. I mean, yes, people want peace, but they see peace as a result of victory, and I understand them. But at the same time, you know, I don't know how realistic.
Andre, it's not just peace versus victory; it's peace versus justice.
Yeah.
And there is a real issue of anyway, here I get on my soapbox. I should get off and let somebody else speak because I'm sure people are sitting patiently. Who else has something that you want to bring into this conversation? Anybody? Peter Brogdon, how's everything up in Kawartha?
I would be happy to.
All right, Alan Haber. Hello, Alan. Our old member of the leaders of the Students for Democratic Society. I can't get over that, you know. You're still my teenage friend.
Still here. We're still here, Seniors for Democratic Society now.
All right.
You're an honorary emeritus at least. And well, what I want to add to this, and it's a focus also on the situation in Gaza and Israel and Palestine, that talking about this is the First World War all over again, the stasis in the trenches.
Mhm.
How absurd that 100 years later we've come to the same point and not just realize that this whole system of war and contention for domination is a failed system, and that our common voice needs to be increasingly end this war system, begin peace, begin what is possible all the time if we just agree not on full spectrum domination, but rather on full spectrum cooperation, because there are urgencies before all humanity and all living species that we must attend to. And this war, not only as a failed system, but as a waste of life and love and resources, must come to an end. So ceasefire is only the first step to say that the war makers need to put down their guns and come to the peace table to talk, and that the peacemakers, such as you, Meta, and the many people in this whole world of peacemakers, needs to put forward a call that the citizens demand the war makers come to the peace table to end this war system and come to as best a settlement in all the outstanding questions in Ukraine and Russia, in Israel, Gaza, Palestine, Sudan, Congo. Look, wherever it is, this is time to end the system of contention and domination and begin the system of necessary collective security and dealing with the questions of climate and environment, which threaten the whole life system, and the polar bears and the whales and all that. And if it's not heart-wrenching enough, then what the hell could be? And so really put down the guns, yes, come to the table to talk. And there is a good peace table also. But the citizens put forward our own peace table that has a good story, and take an initiative, not simply to be spectators in this unfolding tragedy, but to say it is as Eleanor Roosevelt did way back when, before even SDS. You know, it is not, the governments cannot make peace. They're built on war. It's for the people to make the peace of the world. And we need to say, civil society, let's get organized and call for these warmongers to the peace table. Initially, virtually, like you have this whole system set up. There could be a world meeting. I think about the 25th anniversary of the Hague Appeal for Peace from 1899 to 1999, 25 years, and next year we should regather the organizations of the world to demand an end to this total stupidity, insanity, pathological capacity to kill, because somehow somebody thinks they are empowered by an election or by whatever the hell it is. No, enough of it. Anyhow, that's it. My little intervention, nothing new, but I just really end the whole war system.
Right. All right. I don't think anybody here would disagree with you. The question is there anybody who would put another step in the whole equation? I would put another step in there. I think you're not going to get that kind of action until we get some movement toward global governance. You know, that we have to have some sort of recognition of international law and way of creating and sustaining it as a way of disciplining nations, because I think nations, the interest of governments, not always the same as the interest of the people they govern, and I think you've got to combine them or handle it at the same time. But that's my rant. Anybody have a different angle on this?
I have done a lot of, well, maybe I should defer.
No, I'm not seeing a face. Oh, you're talking about
Patrick.
Paul Werbos and then Patrick, okay? Paul speak and then Patrick.
Okay, I have spent a lot of time agonizing over what's happening in Israel, what's behind it, what can we do about it.
Mhm.
It's easy to talk about dialogue, but to get really close to these particular points of view, it takes a certain amount of emotional fortitude. I'm very glad that you, Meta, have provided a great example of the kind of emotional fortitude we need in creating dialogue, but it is hard. And on this issue of what's happening in Israel, there are layers within layers within layers. And in every day, my perception of the situation has changed.
Mhm.
When I talk about the two-state solution, a few days ago, I could have summarized the problem by saying, okay, I've heard 2 points of view. I've heard the US Secretary of State say, we believe in the two-state solution, and a lot of other people still say that. And we can find a way to make it work. And then I've heard from people on both sides of the conflict in Israel. And mostly they've been saying, no way the two-state solution is going to work. We tried it for decades. We really know what the commitments are on the other side. Based on their commitments and their capacities and our experience, a two-state solution won't work. And so it's not entirely a joke about the Schrodinger cat, where the two states might be one alive and one dead. And that's kind of where they were heading. I have had some recent dialogue. And I guess part of the solution is like what I was starting to discuss with you and Adam. There's an issue of visualization. Instead of having a slogan that doesn't mean anything, a lot of the two-state solution slogans are just slogans. If you can visualize content, visualize a real path to really try to get there, where do you want to go? The thing that surprised me most this past week was hearing that there was a voice I hadn't paid attention to. And I was trying to persuade your other Adam to start thinking about the third way, the Russian third way, because the Russians and the Chinese are certainly key players here. No question about the Russians and the Chinese being key players. In that world, there is a concept of a third way, which is not a theocratic state. Because a lot of the reason why two-state appears unrealistic is it's a choice between two different racist, genocidal versions of a particular narrow theocracy.
Nicely said.
Yeah. The fantasy I don't really believe is if we could have a vote among the people of the war to put Khamenei and Netanyahu together in a box, throw them away and start new, a lot of people would say, hey, that's what you really want. You want to have a kind of one state that is more progressive and universal and gets rid of the evil things that Khamenei and Netanyahu are trying to impose on the people. So anyway, that's my best thinking today. I was halfway hoping your Gorbachev guy would be here because they're closer to communicating this kind of stuff than I am. But if the Russians and the Chinese make up their mind that they want a different kind of one-state solution, maybe there might be some hope for that different kind of more benevolent one-state solution.
Oh, I like that. All right. Thank you so much. And I think Patrick is next, and then Arthur Edelstein.
I think like I mentioned before, there are so many different problems around the world, climate change, war, and so on and so forth. What the group I have been volunteering with has been doing is to try to set up an environment so that all these different issues can be solved as the next stage by capable people like some of you here who are talking about this. It's very difficult for one group to solve all the problems. It's not possible. But one group can be the influencer so that we can get to, like I mentioned, the root cause. What are the causes of it? And the solution is one word, is indifference. People are indifferent to something like this. We have been indifferent. You and I or guilty, some people would say, about ignoring the plight of the Palestinian people. So whether you agree with that or not, is the awareness that there are such issues. So what the group here in Canada we have been doing is to disseminate the awareness of many issues. Like I mentioned to Meta before, we work on social etiquette, on empathy, and so on, so that company employees and CEOs have the awareness that there are issues of incivility at work that affects people's well-being. And when people can't even get their mind around being safe and respected at work, they don't have the mental space to think about Hamas and the microplastic and all that issue. So, and what happened when people don't agree on are not aware, they won't vote for the right politicians to be in office so that they will set the right policies. And that is what is happening. We don't have climate issue. I was a busboy in the 1970s, and I heard customer talk about Habitat 76. So Habitat 76, 1976, they were already talking about issues like that. And some wise people told me, Patrick, if people want to solve problems, it would have been long gone already. So it is about people's awareness, and we need to have the masses being aware of something like this. And so what we have done is to go to different companies, and then we talk to people about all these issues. They read an article or watch a video for 5 minutes every day. They earn some points so that we can keep score. And that's how we bring awareness to the world. And then when awareness is there, then there will be smart people in the world who would be coming up with the right solution to vote in the right politicians and then set the right policies. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Very good. Arthur and then Andre.
Hey, everybody. Kind of building on this theme, I wanted to bring up a new project that I've been working on that I shared with Meta recently, which is about thinking about what are the most important concrete actions that we could take as a world that would address these really big problems that basically threaten human existence. And I mean, those things include the war system. They also include issues like climate change or conservation. And so what I was thinking about is that we already do have a system that's attempting to address this, which is the United Nations. And we have international treaties that address all of these major problems. But one problem is that countries have not signed up to all these treaties. For example, the US has not signed up to most of the nuclear treaties, nor has it signed up to the International Criminal Court. It has not signed up to the Biodiversity Convention. So these are concrete things that countries could do to improve or let's say reduce the risk that we're going to annihilate ourselves. So I made a table of these treaties with basically a yes or no for each country. Has it signed up for this or that treaty? And the results are pretty interesting, just comparing countries to see which ones and which regions have been more interested in peace and preventing nuclear war, et cetera. And so I'm hoping that this is something that could be helpful in general for the discussion of like, where should we focus our efforts? What are the concrete actions we can take that would improve the situation in a measurable way? So it's kind of a similar idea of trying to keep score, trying to give some incentive to push things in the right direction.
Can you put that on your screen and
yeah, I'll paste
share?
Okay.
Because I think they'd like to see it. Not in great ways, but you can point out how it works.
Okay. Yeah. Just a sec. Let me open it up here.
I think you got your data from the UN itself, right?
It comes from the UN databases.
There wouldn't be any way for anybody short of that kind of power to collect that kind of information, I think, because it's a huge project. And it's very interesting to speculate on why some countries would sign certain things and not others. What's any argument against signing a biodiversity treaty? Could there be an argument, or did they bother? Do they just say, as Patrick just said, it's a matter of indifference?
Well, it's the indifference. So what the strategy has to be, we got to line up individual self-interest, our own selfishness, and companies and politicians' self-interest to the common good. And unless we can line the two up, we'll never get anything done, because politicians will not vote for anything at the UN and so on unless they are voted into office to have that mandate. So if the general populations are not aware or they're indifferent, then nothing will get done, because the right politicians will not be voted in to do the right thing. So it all based.
Let's see what Arthur. Where's your table? If you got it,
Looks like I need to restart Zoom in order to share I'll be right back. Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Maybe I should go ahead and let Andre have his turn, because I know you said you got to leave sometime soon, Andre. You can have
Yes.
for a moment.
Yes, thank you. I'll need to leave soon after this, so I just wanted to comment on a few things. First of all, the comments about the Middle East and the Russia and China's approach. I don't know much about China's position on the Middle East. I don't even know that much about Russia's position on the Middle East. What I want to say is that for wrong reasons, even an evil government in some situations might suggest proper and right things. You know, if Adolf Hitler said that 2 times 2 equals 4, that's not a reason to change the multiplication table, nor is that a reason to forget about who he really was. So, in that sense, yes, it might be that on certain international issues, Russia's position might make sense. However, we should not close our eyes to the fact that today, unfortunately, Russia transformed, especially after February 24th, 2022, after its full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Russia transformed from a rather typical in today's world corrupt authoritarian state, which is quite common if you look at different countries in the world. It transformed into a system of modern 21st century fascism, and it should be understood and treated as a fascist state today. Yeah. And that should be clearly understood. Even if on some issues, like in the Middle East, Russia might, for its own reasons, come up with some rather reasonable points and positions. That's the first thing. And the second thing I just would like to mention that I am considering I don't know the dates yet, but in a relatively near future, another trip to North America. And I hope that during that trip, I'll have a chance to speak at various institutions, universities, colleges, etc. So if there is interest in hearing more about what's happening in this part of the world and understanding better, you know, what's happening in Russia and Ukraine, where the war is going on, all that, that's something that I might be able to.
Okay, listen, may I suggest this then, Andre? Put your email address in the chat, and after this is over, and when I put it up on the website, I'll put the chat up, and you can go there and look for Andre's email address, and if any of you have an idea where you could invite him to be a speaker, then get in touch with him that way, okay? Is that agreeable, Andre?
Yeah, I put it already.
Yeah. Okay, I want to go back to Art because I see you.
And I'll say goodbye now because I'll need to, or leave in maybe in just a couple minutes.
Well, have a great trip and keep in touch, and God bless. Okay?
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye. All right. Arthur, tell us what we're looking at here on this screen.
Yeah, can you see it? So
yeah, looks good.
Okay, great. So this is the website. I just published it a few days ago for the first time, and basically it's a big table. It has about 9 treaties across the top, including two regarding the International Criminal Court. There's 4 about nuclear weapons. There's the Biological Weapons Convention, Convention on Biological Diversity and the Paris Agreement on Climate Change. And then each row is for a different country. And it's just very simple. It's just saying whether or not each treaty has been joined by that country. So you have an X if they haven't joined, and you have a check if they've joined. And then you can sort by population. Right now it's sorted by population, but you could also sort alphabetically if you're interested in finding a particular country. Then I have a score, which is very simply a count of how many treaties a country has joined. So if we sort by score, then the top countries have 9 out of 9. They have signed up for all of these existential treaties. So they're kind of the well-behaved countries. It's interesting to see that a large number are in Latin America. And then you can sort it the other way. You can see that Israel actually has the worst score. And then there are several countries that have only 3 out of 9. That includes the United States. In the next group of 4 out of 9, that includes China. So it just gives kind of an overview of at least what seemed to me to be the most important treaties regarding human existence, treaties that are mitigating risks of extinction or near extinction.
Interesting. Yeah.
So go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. Before I leave, I just would like to make a comment on this. Unfortunately, Russia just officially left the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty.
Yes.
The Russian Parliament voted to leave that treaty, to denounce that treaty.
I should check to make sure. I don't think that's been updated on the UN database yet, but I should check. Yeah, it still says that it's a member, but that will hopefully be updated soon.
Well, as far as I can recall, the what is it? The New START treaty is the only thing that's been halfway constraining anybody about nuclear weapons lately, and that's going to go by the boards, it looks like, or it might. Is that your impression?
I'm not sure, but
well, there's talk about, there's occasionally they talk about trying to save it, but with the war going on, it's, that makes it even harder. Rose Tyson, you have your hand up.
Yes, I want to pick up on something that Patrick was saying earlier about how a greater awareness amongst the people at large will lead to more action, presumably on their part, or voting the appropriate people into office to accomplish some of these things that we see here on the screen, the survival score and treaties to sign on to that will ultimately result in better global governance. I think psychological studies demonstrate that being aware of something doesn't necessarily translate into action. And I think Patrick also made some references to having to appeal to the self-interested motivations of people. The problem with democratic governments is that they have to always have a rear guard view to where their voting base is at. And consider what's just happened in Canada with the carbon tax and Trudeau backtracking and giving a reprieve in terms of its stringency for the Atlantic provinces who can now use fossil fuels a little more freely. And I just think one of the dilemmas is the messiness of democratic voting that not sure how we get around.
Thank you, Rose. I think, Art, if you don't mind, I think we're through with this, much as we can see of that. Thank you so much. Yes, somebody else wanted, I think that's an interesting observation, Rose. The question of, if you're aware, then do you always take the right side? And I'm not sure. I'd like to agree with Patrick. Yes, go ahead, Patrick.
Well, I do agree, Rose. Awareness doesn't mean there's action. What our group is doing is not even demanding action, because we know people like to just sit on their butt and just let everybody else do their own thing. But when they have the awareness, I'm talking about a general culture in a country or a company and so on, then we can move the needle slowly. It's a big barge, it's a big oil liner in the water. You want to change its course, it's very difficult. You can only nudge it a little by little. And with our limited resources, well, everybody has limited resources, we can only do the influencer. So instead of trying to bite off all the problems around the world, not even biting off getting people for action, we're biting off that we can influence people by just having the awareness. And we can do that very quickly because there's an app we built. And so people read an article 5 minutes a day, and then we align their self-interest by giving them points called the World Civility Index. And then when they earn the index, they can help their company to have better ESG report, the new kind of report that's on top of a financial report. They need to report on the environment, the social, and the governance. This is big thing. So we're aligning people's self-interest, the money man, all the institutional investors, the companies. So when they are all aligned and we give them incentive, then we may have hope. It's not bulletproof, but anything else, we're just talking and talking and talking. Just like Habitat 76 till now is more than 50 years.
Okay, I agree with you in part, but there's also been some global or global mail coverage on BlackRock, for example, a big investment company who had to backtrack on their ethical investment initiatives because the companies weren't lining up in a way that they would like. So they're continuing to do it, but they have to do it more quietly. In other words, unfortunately, the corporate best interests are not always there in a way that we might like or would predict. And it's sometimes been said that we have an excess of democracy. I know that's a radical notion, but I wonder if we are at a point where we need bolder government in some ways, and some of the restrictions that or the rationing, for example, of materials, consumer goods that were introduced during the Second World War. Wouldn't something like that be useful at this juncture in our crisis-ridden world?
I think so. I think you're absolutely right. I think, again, if we let the masses, if we believe that they are intelligent, it's just that they're lazy and they don't want to think. People like my daughters and her peers in their teenagers' years, they know more about Taylor Swift and her boyfriend than they learn about Tommy Douglas in Canada, who invented universal health care back 70, 100 years ago. So I think that's a big problem. I think just by that, having that kind of fundamental issues that we're not solving, everything else is just talk. You see, the invisible hand, the really rich and powerful, they don't want the real issue to be discussed. They much rather have all the distractions and so on, so that the masses are really busy doing their work and become slaves to them. We give them money and they become richer. That's why we're getting poorer and poorer and the rich are getting richer, because the real issues are not being debated. So that when we can bring a lot of these issues to the awareness, then we have hope. Otherwise, our group don't see the hope, because all of us, as passionate as we are just playing into the hands of the invisible, what we call invisible hand, which are the rich and famous.
Well, it gets worse, actually. It's what is being taught in our schools is part of the problem. And history, for example, is going by the board. There's lots of hand-wringing amongst elementary and high school teachers, as well as university professors, about the declining interest in history of any kind. And media, of course, has an impact on all of that because it's profit-driven and it's all geared toward what's going to catch and hold our eyeballs the longest and the quickest.
That's right. Yeah, that's the invisible hand that I was talking about. Is you don't see it, but it's happening all around us. Marketing in our school boards and so on. They want to dumb us down so that people are no longer interested in history and so on, so that they don't see that. Hey, many years ago, the Nazis were invading Soviet Union. So now with Russians, in terms of empathy, some of us will argue and say that Russians may actually have parents and grandparents buried in their backyard. So having a massive army encroaching on their homeland is not something that is a fantasy. And they see the NATO to be encroaching, moving eastward, whereas Ronald Reagan and Jane Baker were saying that they would not move an inch eastward. Now, is that something that we should let people know and let them be the judge? Those are kind of things that are not being discussed. And then again, in Hamas and Israel, there's some people are saying, well, maybe Israel should really back off because they have been doing to them what the Nazis have been doing to them. Is that really true? I'm not passing judgment, but we should let those kind of things be aware so that real democracy can happen, because people have all these different views of what is actually happening. And hopefully that will generate research and people being interested in something like this instead of Taylor Swift, even though I really like her songs.
I am really tempted to talk about the Russian viewpoint because I've heard it so much. One thing I know about the Russian viewpoint is if I really tell it like it is, they won't like it. They have a sense of privacy in Russia earned through a kind of natural selection. So let me avoid that and come back to your other point, which is about empathy. I think it is really, really true that the issue of empathy in the human mind is deeply, deeply fundamental to how all of these things are going to play out.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that partly with knowledge of neuroscience and psychology and other such fields. The deeper you go, the more people learn this word empathy. It's not just a cereal box. It is a foundation of life.
Mm-hmm.
But there's some other strange aspects of empathy. I believe a lot of the dysfunction of all major governments on this planet is due to the fact that there is conflict of interest in every major government, which blocks the degree of truth, which blocks the deployment and use of empathy. One of the weirdest things I've been thinking lately, don't take it too far, but as I look at human governments failing to address climate change intelligently, failing to address warfare, failing to address internet, failing to address financial systems, there's mathematics for all of these things. Why are we screwing them all up? Part of it is the way our human brains work. And a strange new thing, it turns out that there are cetaceans, like different types of dolphins and orcas and maybe whales, who have brain formations which in some ways are more advanced than the human.
How so?
Specifically to support empathy.
Really?
There is machinery in the brain of the advanced dolphins, which by reflex automatically uses empathy, and it changes their ability to work together. And I've been thinking, God, we need to hook them up to the internet. We really need to get the more intelligent cetaceans into the internet and make greater use of their wisdom. Mm-hmm. And it's not a joke because there's real neuroscience there. Anyway, so I had my noise, but it's real.
Let me comment about something that, when Obama speaks about politics and his philosophy and stuff, one of the things he talks about most is the importance of empathy. And he talks about his own upbringing, that his mother, her way of disciplining him when he did something that would hurt somebody else or offend or generally, create problems for other people, she would say, "How would you feel if somebody did that to you?" And she apparently would not back down, that she demanded that he imagine what it would feel like to be in that situation. And she wouldn't let go. He couldn't get out of the doghouse with her until he actually showed that he was really trying to imagine what that would be like. And of course, if he imagined what it would be like to be hurt in that way. Then, of course, he would feel remorse and he would apologize, and then he would make amends or whatever. At least that would be an idea that would occur to him, that he needed to straighten out a bit, as he'd done something wrong. But if he keeps defending himself and arguing that he's right and his point of view, that means he's simply absolutely unable to be empathetic with the other person and to imagine what that person is feeling. So he says that the main quality that's important in politics is the ability to empathize, and that if you've got people empathizing, that you can handle the substance of their political disagreement, because the method of handling it is the empathy. So I think that is so brilliant. And I contrast that to what, if you read stories about Trump and his upbringing, it was like the one thing that his father took responsibility for was bringing up their boys. Apparently the mother was supposed to take care of the daughters, and the father was going to take care of the sons and be responsible for bringing them up. So it was the father's demands that had the most influence on Trump. And the one thing that the father would never allow is for his sons to empathize with anybody that they may have offended or hurt. And he demanded that they constantly be sure that they were right, even if they were obviously not. So I think it's so important to be able to teach people, children and everybody all the way up, to empathize as much as possible. And yet, the time comes when you're in a court of law, for example, and you're the judge, and you're going to have to say, well, you got to go to prison. I can see how you feel, and I'm sorry you did what you did, but the law is the law, and you broke it, and you're going to the slammer. I think that there is a distinction between empathy and constant forgiveness and leaving latitude for other people to accept their point of view. There's a tension between that and a rule of law, but that's a whole different story. Anyway, thank you, Paul. Are we on the same page? Well, where of us? Oh, you're muted again.
Yeah, I was hoping I was on Patrick's page. I think we're sort of together, but there's a lot more to discuss, as you say. There's a lot more to discuss. I was in a Quaker discussion this morning where a guy who lives in the mountains in West Virginia was saying, one group says animals have souls, we should really empathize with them. And then we got a bunch of hunters and we got to live off of our food. How do we deal with our inner conflict here? And we discussed that for about an hour. Mm-hmm. I highly recommended a BBC video series on the natural world, where they have a video of orcas, dolphins, and whales interacting with the herring, which they're about to eat.
Really?
And it's a very well done video because it doesn't show a war. It shows that over the millions of years, they have evolved a kind of a dance. And it's not a war at all. These are very evolved creatures.
Well, it's like in the movie Avatar, all these alien beings, those tall blue ones, when they kill the animal, they did a little prayer. So I think that is the thing. You need to eat, yes, but why? When I tell my girls, I say, when you eat beef, when you eat that, remember some animals die so that we can live. So make your life useful. Mm-hmm. I think that's the value. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Good. That's wonderful. Who else? Let's see. Do we have anybody who wants to reflect on this? Here's Charles Tauber. Hello, Charles.
Hi, how are you?
In Vukovar, Croatia.
Yeah. Couple of things to tell you guys about, but do you want to do it now or wait?
Well, I think, I mean, I don't want to shift the conversation away if somebody wants to pursue the empathy business. If so, put your hand up quickly. Otherwise, I'm going to ask and see whether Charles has something to share with us. Any hands? I don't see anybody. Okay, go on, Charles. Oh, Alan did. Sorry, just a sec. Alan, you're a little slow on the draw. Here you go. What's up?
Well, I appreciated this last discussion, and as I've been trying to do, to see that we are in a system of war and domination, and we need a system change to a system of peace, of caring, of sharing, of helping, and of healing. And in seeking to describe that, I say that compassion and empathy are the needed qualities, and courage. I think to see empathy as part of the peace system, different from the war system, which is one of domination and impunity, that puts empathy in the place where we need a system change from war and domination to peace and cooperation. And empathy is one of the virtues that we need to develop.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Now, where were we? Patrick, are you also on the empathy angle? Keep going.
Well, the last mile of the solution is that we got to make it count. For school students and so on, they will only do things that count. And just like employees, unless it counts, they won't pay attention to it unless, they got some brownie points and so on. That's why this group, they invented the World Civility Index. It's almost like your personal credit rating, but instead of measuring how well you can pay your bills, it measures how much empathy you have. So it seems like the crux of the problem was there was no measurement in that, but now there is. So we're trying to introduce that to the Canadian government and so on in that regard.
Okay, thank you. And let's go on back now to Charles Tauber, and then I want to get to Alexei Prokorenko, who's just joined us. Charles.
Why don't you let Alexei speak first? I think.
No.
Go ahead.
No, please, Charles, please go ahead.
Okay. Well, there's a lot going on here. I think I wrote a little bit of it to Meta. The amount of trauma all over the world, it's not only in Israel, Palestine, but for example, we have a couple of groups in Congo and in other places, in Nigeria and other places. And people are ignoring these other places. And nobody is dealing with the traumas. I mean, I know I say the same thing every month, but it's awful. And we're not going to solve anything. We have this cycle, we have it here now, too, where there's traumatization, then there's transmission of the traumatization to the next generation, then they create another war and people get traumatized, and it's again transmitted. And this has been going on literally for centuries. If you look at people like Vomit Volkan, for example, around here,
Who?
he's saying,
Who?
do you know Vomit Volkan?
Oh, yes.
Right there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, from the University of Virginia, or he was, but he's a Cypriot. I'll write the name in the chat.
Yeah, Vomit Volkan, Volkan, is it? Uh-huh.
Yep.
Uh-huh. Yeah, okay.
And there are others who talk about this transmission of trauma from generation to generation. And there's the secondary traumatization that goes within groups and between groups. And it's awful. And they're saying, in fact, here, some of the studies of a couple of years ago, that the children of this generation are even more traumatized than their parents who actually went through the wars of the 90s. So it's pretty awful stuff, and nobody seems to be doing anything about it. And we're fighting for money. That's another issue. I don't know if we're going to survive or not. I hope we will. But that's another thing. We're in this period now, October, November, where they commemorate that Vukovar, quote unquote, fell to the Serbs in 91. And it gets extremely nationalistic. They infect children. The hospital is about, where some of this occurred, is about 1 or 2 streets away from us. And you see busloads of kids being taken to the hospital, and you can imagine what they're putting into their little heads. So we're pretty upset about this. The work online, we're moving on. We're still trying to find somebody to illustrate the book that we've done on communication. I'm slowly writing the book on the psychology of conflict for field people. That's going to still take a couple of months, and then it will have to be formatted. If anybody knows somebody who can format the book on communication, please get a hold of me. And the other thing is, if somebody knows somebody who will go through a stack of potential donors and help us do some fundraising, that also would be appreciated. But my big point is that they're not even talking about this in terms even of the Arab-Israeli conflict, of the trauma, of the mental health situation and the trauma. And this is going to go on. And actually, this whole war came out of the traumatization. This is what I mean by this cycle. And if nothing is done about it, this will go on and create a new war, even after all of this is done. So we're pretty upset about everything in general. And it's really the two of us. It's my colleague, Sandra Maric, and me, who are doing everything. So
well, every time I hear you, it just doesn't sound any different, Charles.
It isn't very different.
It's it's always the same. It's like it's not making any progress. Do you feel you are making any progress at all?
Well, with individual groups, we are. We have a lovely women's group in Congo now. And there's a man from Malawi who is a member of that group, and he's working with child soldiers, so we'll work with them. We're working with the Nigerians. That's helping. We're doing some stuff locally. I'm making some progress on the book. Doing some I'm working on the base at the moment on the basics of therapy and on the somatic stuff, including drugs and all the rest of it. And the section I'm working on now is quite interesting. It's on meditation. So,
on what?
On meditation, on the positive psychological effects of various forms of meditation.
Well, I see here that we have Davidson Okonya from Kenya who's with us, and I'll call on Davidson in a minute once we hear from Alexei, because I'm very keen to hear Alexei's report of the month. He's in Warsaw. He's a Russian who's living in Warsaw to keep from being sent to Ukraine to fight. So after Alexei, I'll see, where is Davidson? Your face isn't showing, Davidson, but I see your name here. So if you can turn your camera on, I'll get back to you in a minute after we say hello to Alexei. Alexei, hi.
Hello, that's me.
Yeah.
Hello.
How's everything?
Well, I'm still in Warsaw. I traveled to the U.S. to the New York City for just 5 days to just cross the border and open my visa and stuff. But now I will be based mostly in Warsaw. Tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, I'm going to go to the Border Patrol Service to ask for asylum here because my visa expires. My visa expires on November 4, so I will be seeking asylum in this country, in Poland.
Well, now you make it sound as if you're making a choice between Poland and the U.S. for your future. Is that correct?
More or less. At a certain point, I will be coerced by life itself to make this choice. It's no easy choice, in fact.
Yeah, no, I imagine it's not. You once studied in Texas, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right?
This is correct. It was a very formative semester that I still hold fondly in my memory, in my soul. And so when I came to the U.S. after 19 years, after that semester, I kind of I was just deeply moved by getting back, almost back home.
Mm-hmm. Well, okay. So where were you in Texas? I've forgotten. I'm not sure I ever knew.
I just studied at the University of Texas at Austin.
At Austin.
Yeah.
Well, supposedly a lovely city. I haven't ever been there, but I have a nephew who's a professor in Baylor in Waco, Texas. Yeah. Okay, so you have to make this choice. Well, tell us what we need to do to help you decide.
I don't know. There is no right or wrong. There is no right or wrong decision because now that I will be seeking asylum in Poland, it is a lengthy procedure which will take about 6 to 8 months, during which I will be unable to work here in the country. I will be working remotely somewhere, and I will not be able to leave Poland for 6 months, at least.
Mm-hmm. You already say you don't work officially. You're making your living from being a hotel clerk desk or something, right?
Yeah, I work at the hotel, and sometimes I have odd jobs as an interpreter. I continue building bridges between cultures, between peoples, more or less. I do it through Zoom remotely. I do conference interpreting, which kind of continues what I've been doing before, and that's how I'm gonna. I will just make my way into the IT industry, and that's the plan for the next years.
Mm-hmm.
And today is sorry.
No, go on.
Today, I'm sorry for being late to our discussion. I was just standing in a line, in a very important line. Today is an important day, especially for everyone who is related to the dissident movement in the former USSR, former Soviet Union. Yeah. Today is the day of political prisoners. Today is the day when we commemorate the victims of the Soviet regime. Mm-hmm. And what we do is we form a line. It was the case in Moscow, and it was the case in Warsaw today. We form a line, and everyone gets a piece of paper with several 3 to 4 names written on it. The names of the people who were killed in Stalin's camps. Or, for example, today I decided to read in Polish. I read out the names of the Polish officers and engineers and doctors who were killed in 1940.
Is that the Katyn massacre?
It's part of that story. Yes, it was in Kharkov, but it's part of the same story. Yes, mm-hmm. And this was kind of a tribute that I of the ways I could say thank you to this country, which gave me refuge, which gave me shelter, at least for 1 year. And so it's just a beautiful way to commemorate those people who were killed in repressions. And I felt it was just important, and the line was quite long.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
In Moscow, it takes up to 12 or 14 or 16 hours to stand in that line before you can really read your part, and the weather is never very nice in late October, but people do that.
Mm-hmm.
People do that.
Uh-huh.
Little we can do.
By the way, I hear you've had an election and that good things have come from the recent election. Is that true?
Well, in Poland, first of all, it was a very interesting election, something which I had been missing in Russia, because on the night of the election, I was following the discussion. It was very vital, very intriguing. You never knew for sure who would win. And then when the result came, it was still uncertain which coalitions will be formed and how the government will be shaped. That's what I really like about every elections, when there is uncertainty, when you have to bargain, to negotiate. It means that no one will dominate, no one will prevail up to a point of coercion.
Well, but I did read that the outcome of the election doesn't necessarily mean that the country is less polarized politically than it had been. Is that the case? You still have a high degree of polarization in Poland?
Of course, yes. So it's been there for almost forever. There's an interesting distribution, geographical distribution. You can read about it on Wikipedia. Mm-hmm. The Poles themselves are not very keen on talking about this, but there is Poland A and Poland B. Mm-hmm. Poland A is more conservative, Poland B is more liberal. And oddly enough, 100 years after the partitions of Poland, the borders of Poland A and Poland B coincide with the former Russian Empire and the former German Empire. Mm. That's a tricky question. Why? But it still is just you see how people vote on during the elections, and you can see that the borders of yore are still visible on the map.
I see.
But it's nice that people there are different views, and they just are more or less balanced.
And it would be public opinion conforms to the borders that were defined by Germany and Russia hundreds of years ago.
In quite a pronounced way.
Really? Okay.
100 years.
What I don't know exactly. I've been to Poland, but I can't visualize where the liberals are and where the conservatives are. What cities are liberal?
Warsaw and Krakow are liberal, and all the rest of the east and the south are conservative. I will just when I'm finished, I can post a link to the article which describes it, and the map, of course.
Okay. Well, maybe we can put it. Why don't you put it on the website? It'll be interesting to other people. If you put the map up, that'd be really interesting.
Sure. Just how the former divide, which ended like 100 years ago, how it still is visible. 100 years afterwards, different migrations. So it's a long story, really, because the west of Poland was German. There were almost no Poles. The Poles that live there now came from the east, actually from the very east of the country. But still, I don't know. It's a difficult story. It's a long one.
Thank you. Okay, Davidson and Konya. I hope you can unmute yourself, because I want to greet you. I want to move on from We'll go from Poland to Africa now, if you don't mind. Hello, Davidson. How are you?
Yes, Meta. You can all hear me, I believe.
Yes, I think so.
Yes, yes. Okay, very good. I'm actually using a small cell phone, and you'll bear with me because my house has no electricity. I'm using a small solar lamp. It is actually late evening for us here in East Africa. It's about 10 p.m. For us here, so it's dark in my living room. You can see behind me. This is really Africa.
Yeah, well, I can't see your living room very well. I have in the past, but in fact, I remember seeing you surrounded by a large family, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Do you still, are your family members all around you scattered in the dark or what?
No, they are now asleep. They're now in bed. That's sleeping now.
Now you got to bring me up to date because I haven't seen you in about a year. I think it's been a while since you were on this town hall. Tell me what you are up to. I think you're a pastor, are you not? Aren't you a minister, a priest, or not a priest, but
yes,
a Protestant minister of some kind? Do you hear me?
Yes, I have a background in theology. Yes, I can hear you, and I hope you can also hear me. I am ordained by the Mennonite Church in Kenya, but currently I kind of deviated a little bit because I'm now doing community work. I run a non-profit that works in peace building and the promotion of good governance and helping of migrants in my locality. Yeah, so that is taking a lot of my time. I ministry work, I kind of am giving it a light touch because I feel the needs of the community are more overwhelming than the
who supports you? If you're a pastor, I presume that you are being paid by your congregation and you look after your people. But then how do you how do you mix that in with your work in promoting good governance?
Yeah, that's a good question, Meta. Actually, as a pastor here in Africa, you are not salaried. Pastoral work is voluntary. You don't get any payment for that. So, and it is not a full-time job like in the West, where pastor has an office and has a salary at the end of the month. No, for us here, it is different. A pastor here is more of a volunteer. So I have to do other things to make ends meet and to get income for my family.
So it sounds like you do the equivalent of writing grants to survive. And those of us in NGOs, I'm getting acquainted with the whole process of trying to write grants in order to get through another year here or there. Is that the kind of thing you do? Sort of freelance, pick up what funds you can here and there from different sources?
Yes, I have to raise funds. I have to get in touch with well wishers and volunteers and the people who are philanthropic and organizations that want to invest in Africa here, get some donations for our work in the community. Yes, that is it.
Well, I think other people here may have some questions to put to you. I can't remember where you are in Kenya. Can you remind us, and then I'll see who wants to interrogate you.
Okay, I am not in the city. I'm actually 8 hours west of Nairobi by bus. If you come to Kenya, you'll actually get to the airport in Nairobi. That is the main city, and then you have to take a bus 8 hours by road now to my community, which is in the western part of Kenya. So from my home to where Barack Obama's father came from, that is around Lake Victoria, is 2 hours. And my home is only 1 hour to the border of Kenya and Uganda. I'm actually a volcanic mountaineer called Mount. Yeah. So if you check on the map of Kenya of Kenya and Uganda, on the boundary, you can see there is a mountain called Mount Elgon, and then I'm beneath that Mount Elgon.
Okay. So who would like to have a conversation with him about this? Anybody? You have some thoughts?
In the United States, the Mennonites are considered one of the peace churches.
Yeah.
Is there a war in your area in Western Kenya, but in Uganda, but in Congo? Where are you in the complex of wars in this part of Africa? Is this an engagement of the Mennonites as a church, or are you Mennonite simply because that's a righteous way to be?
Davidson?
Is that a clear question?
Yes, if I got your question clearly, sir, I think you're asking whether whether I'm involved in any peace building work. Yes, we have a lot of conflict here in Africa because generally Africa tribe is a very major determinant of identity, and our communities are polarized on ethnic and tribal identity, very strong. So in Kenya here, we have over 40 tribal communities who speak different languages. And these tribal communities, they rival each other for resources that include land and the political space. The Mount Elgon area where I live and I work has had a lot of conflict since the colonial days. When Kenya gained independence from Britain in 1963, we have a lot of tribal animosity among different people groups here in Kenya, and the tribal animosity resurfaces around election time when we go to campaigns and the choosing of political leaders. That is the time that you see a lot of conflict come up. So my entity, the NGO that I work, that actually sprang from the Mennonite Church. Yes, Mennonite Church is very much involved in peace work. So we felt at some point that it was not important for us just to sit in the walls of the church and pray only. We needed to engage with the community. So we began a non-profit that involves a few people from the church and also others from the community who are opinion leaders. We came together to begin this organization called Mount Elgon Peace Initiative, where I serve on the board of directors as the board chair.
And what are some of the things that you've done as a community or as this organization?
Yes, that's a good question, Meta. We do peace building work by improving the socialization of children in school. We do peace education. We run peace clubs in local schools. We hold community dialogue forums where different segments of society come together on a common table to discuss emerging issues. And we also advocate for good governance, where we do scorecards to score and rate the performance of public officers. Yes.
You mean police
that's
officers?
A bit of what,
are government officers, or you mean police officers?
Not police officers. No. We mean holders of public office, like the governor, elected leaders, like the members of parliament, and local administrators.
Do you find that there's a big problem with corruption?
Yes, that is it. Corruption is really deeply rooted here in Africa, such that virtually no one can get a position in government or in a public office without coughing out some money, and that has become a problem even with young people who are coming out of college and university. For them to get a job, like in the police, the military, or even to become teachers, you have to buy that position. It's not given freely, so it becomes a challenge when a young man who has come out of university, he has the academic papers, he has the requisite technical know-how, but when he's required to give out money, get that position, he doesn't have the money yet. So most of them are just staying at home. They cannot get jobs because they do not have the money to buy those positions.
I wonder if any of us here on this show have been in a country that has really substantially defeated corruption. I don't know how we would know. Of course, there's this wonderful organization called Transparency International, which tries to keep track of it, but I haven't followed them that closely. Patrick, yes.
Well, I think Singapore is maybe not a good example because they started off building their country with no corruption in mind, with Lee Kuan Yew, the founder. Another case would be Hong Kong. Hong Kong used to be really corrupted with when it was a British colony, and the British just let the Chinese run wild, do their own thing. But after a little while, it was the Hong Kong population that pressure the government to change, to have this anti-corruption agency, independent anti-corruption agency that was independent. I have to stress the word independent, and they report not to anybody, but they can do their thing except to the judicial system there. So I think that was one case where, again, I think with Alexei was talking about, the East and West Poland being divided after even 100 years. And I would imagine that it was the culture that left behind from 100 years ago that make the people think in a certain way. So those are kind of things that we're always talking about, is how can we actually change the masses to have this level of awareness? And by awareness, then things will get done eventually. So whether it's in Kenya or in Poland, in the old Hong Kong, now Hong Kong is one of the most uncorrupted region in the world. That's why they have such a prosperity.
Did they did this after the Brits left or before?
That was before. That was the people who. The thing is, though, there are certain middle class, and the middle class was saying that, well, we really want this to happen, whether this is a British colony or part of China and so on. We want something that is fair, and so that we can they align people's self-interest to the pocketbook, because they realize when there's corruption, some people get off with a lot of money, but most people just are worse off in that regard.
Yeah. Well, Davidson, what's your idea of how to get rid of corruption?
Yeah, I think we as we do part of what we are doing, and we want to scale up. This is do public policy forums and a social audit. By social audit, we get the members of the public to report on cases of corruption, and then we do scorecards. So scorecards, members of the public are able to score and rate the performance of public officers without necessarily revealing their identities. People are scoring, and they bring to our office, and then we can do policy documents to the president and to parliament, so that parliament can come up with the laws that can prohibit and limit such cases. That's just some of the thoughts we thought of that we are trying to grapple with. And finally, we also want to engage with the global leaders like now, like we have on this platform, so that we can learn best practices of what is happening and what is working elsewhere. So we can borrow and implement that also in our country here.
Mm-hmm. Well, good luck with it. I don't think I have ever run into a case of corruption that I know of in Canada. I once, when I was immigrating to Canada, I had my dog with me, and I had my hands full of money for some reason. And I was talking with the immigration officer about the problem. My dog hadn't been vaccinated, or there's some problem bringing my dog in when I was immigrating. And this man looked at me, and I was holding money. And he really thought that what I was doing was offering him a bribe. And I remember being so mortified because it was just happened to be I was holding money. I wasn't trying to get him to make any special favors for me. But I haven't encountered anything that looks like corruption that I guess I'd call corruption here. But I remember seeing it a lot in Russia in the 90s. Going around Moscow, I had a driver who took me wherever I needed to go, and every week or at least twice we'd be stopped somehow by a policeman. And my driver would get out of the car, reaching into his wallet to get his wallet out, and he would walk over. I stayed in the car, of course, and he would walk over, and you could see him talking to the police officer, pulling a bill out of $10 or whatever was the equivalent, and handing it to him, and then walk off and get back in the car. And, you know, it was perfectly visible. Anybody could see. And I was just astounded that it was just so obvious. And so I got home, and my driver was the father of the lady I was staying with. And he didn't speak English. We got along fine, but he and I got along fine. But I couldn't talk to him. But I got home and I told his daughter about this, and I said, you know, this is really appalling. She said, well, the man has to make a living. They aren't paying the police officers enough to survive. So, of course, he has to accept bribes. So I did have a little bit more compassion for him at the time. Here comes Gordon Edwards. I don't know. Gordon Edwards, I'm glad to see you. But I must say you've come at the wrong time, because I was about to say goodbye to everybody. Adam Wynn, you've rejoined us too.
Well, I've been here the whole time, and I've just had my camera off because my computer starts to run extremely slow when I have the camera on at the same time as I have all the other Project Save the World windows open. But Dr. Edwards, I need to ask if you have any recommendations for an expert on nuclear vitrification, which the U.S. is spending $17 billion on. We tried to get Michael Ojavan and Claire over in the UK, and I can't get a hold of either of them. So I'm wondering if you might know any experts here in North America, or even elsewhere.
Say that again. I'm not quite sure what the issue is.
Nuclear vitrification. How they're trying to invest $17 billion into a vitrification for a nuclear waste plant down at Hanford and other sites. They want to turn it into the glass logs.
Oh yes, okay. Well, that's of course an old story. I would suggest that you could contact Frank von Hippel.
Okay.
And he would at least direct you to somebody who would be particularly good on that issue, or either that or Ed Lyman with the Union of Concerned Scientists in Boston.
Okay.
Ed Lyman was one of the Ed Lyman was one of the people who was on last year's National Academy of Sciences committee that had many hearings that were telecast on advanced fuel cycles, which would include, of course, processing, and which would require vitrification. So,
okay, thank you. And is this something you're familiar with? Would you be interested in sitting on a discussion about that?
Beg your pardon?
Would you be interested in sitting on a potential discussion on that?
Sure, depending on when that would be and so on. You know.
Yeah, okay.
But, I have to tell you something interesting that many people don't know. and that is that Canada was one of the very first countries in the world to do vitrification on a very small scale. They actually, during the Cold War, right after the Second World War, they had 2 reprocessing plants operating at Chalk River, and they did vitrify. They did create some glass blocks, which they put in sandy soil, with a flow of water, and kept an eye on it for many years just to see how it behaved. So vitrification is an old story.
Okay, well, thank you. I'll reach out to them.
Sounds good. Okay, Gordon, I'm welcome, but I was about to sign off when you joined us.
Oh, I thought it was 4 o'clock. I made a mistake, I guess.
Oh, that's fine. I want to just say hello anyway. What's going on in the world of, I should introduce you by saying that you are Canada's most eminent expert on nuclear dangers, nuclear weapons, and especially nuclear hazards of the nuclear industry. So how's your bailiwick proceeding?
Well, we're very concerned about 2 things that Canada is doing that are not well documented, but which could upset the balance seriously in terms of proliferation. One is the government of Canada is investing in and tentatively supporting a project in New Brunswick, which would involve the preliminary removal, extraction of plutonium from CANDU spent fuel in order to supply fuel for a new small modular reactor, a molten salt reactor. And that sends a very dangerous signal to the rest of the world. There are 4 letters written by 9 to 12 non-proliferation experts from the United States, including Frank von Hippel, whom I mentioned, who is a stalwart in this field. And I can make those letters available to any or all of you. They're public domain, they're open letters. And the other thing, which I've just heard about recently, is that apparently, and this is only at the moment hearsay on my part, but apparently Canada may be playing a significant role in helping China to obtain weapons-usable tritium. Tritium, as you probably know, if added to a fission weapon of any kind, even 2 grams of tritium is enough to increase the explosive power by a factor of 10. So a 20 kiloton bomb turns into a 200 kiloton bomb just by adding tritium, or what they call a tritium spark plug. And Canada has expertise in the tritium field because we produce so damn much tritium as a result of our CANDU reactors. The CANDU reactors produce 30 to 100 times more tritium than other reactors in the world. And we also have a tritium removal plant, and we also sell tritium supposedly for peaceful purposes all over the world for self-illuminating lights. But that same tritium can be used for nuclear weapons as well. And the controls are very questionable. So these are 2 areas in which, now I mentioned this thing about China is as yet a rumor. I haven't substantiated it. However, it is known that Canada played a significant role in helping India obtain the tritium necessary for their nuclear weapons program. So it would not be unprecedented. So anyway, I just wanted to sound the alarm on those 2 points.
Yes, well, I think in the days when Canada helped India, we were getting along with India a lot better, but that Canada is not exactly on friendly terms with China.
Well, that's not actually true, because after India exploded its atomic bomb in 1974, Canada supposedly broke off all relations with India on a nuclear field until recently, when they started once again supplying uranium to India, which is a big mistake in my opinion, because they have not signed the Non-Proliferation Treaty, nor have they agreed to stop making nuclear weapons. So to sell them uranium is really to drive a stake into the heart of the Non-Proliferation Treaty. At any rate, it was during this period when Canada was supposed to have a policy of non-cooperation that the Canadian nuclear people on themselves assisted India in developing tritium extraction capabilities that they could use for their weapons program. I didn't know until many years later that even though Canada supposedly broke off all nuclear cooperation with India, in fact, India and Pakistan both remain members of a group called COG, which is the Can-Do Owners Group. And the Can-Do Owners Group allowed them to meet quite regularly and get assistance from Canadian nuclear technicians, despite the avowed policy of non-cooperation.
Okay, well, you brought me up to date on quite a few things that I had forgotten. My memory wasn't all that sharp on the days when Canada helped India. And I do think we are a little bit over time, and unless somebody has some additional information or ideas to share, I'm going to begin winding it up. Does anybody have anything more that you'd like to comment before we
just very briefly in the world of cybersecurity, the Toronto Public Library has been offline all weekend due to a massive cyber attack. There's no library anywhere. There's no internet anywhere in the library system. 100 plus branches, and the entire library website has gone down due to a cyber attack.
Wow.
What do you think would have done something like that?
They're not sure. They're not releasing any details. It's currently under investigation, but they did say their IT department had prepared for stuff like this.
Does somebody know about that? I hadn't heard about it. Anybody else know? Okay.
Yesterday, there was no internet anywhere in any of the libraries. They've got the internet back up in the branches right now, and the phone system's back because the phone system was also taken out. Now the phone's back, the internet's back in the branches, but you can't get on the website remotely from any computer outside the library right now while we're still trying to figure out where the attack came from. But that's 100 plus library branches that were affected, and they provide vital services for a lot of downtown Toronto.
Well, I have to say one of my nightmares is the whole fact that we become so totally dependent on things that could be knocked out. You know, just this week I had a power outage here in my apartment. It doesn't take much to remind you how vulnerable we are. You know, every single thing that we want to do depends on having electricity or water. I mean, if they shut off the water and the electricity, we'd be done in a few hours, I think. Yeah. But I think that we ought to give some thought to how vulnerable we're making ourselves by having this centralization of all our services on interdependently this way.
This is a very, very serious point. And just this week, there was some news that made me very depressed. I don't know which way to take it. But the issues of what is changing in the internet, it's like 10 layers of change. Reduced cybersecurity is part of it. But the problems with cybersecurity have many, many consequences people just are not facing up to. And that's why the Secretary General, Guterres, accepted a plea from the Millennium Project, which you know I've been involved in, that there should be a new UN agency, and it should develop some of the technologies we need to make the outcome benign, open, transparent, and above all, more secure. This week, the process of the politics of the General Assembly has displayed what it produced. And in my view, it's like seeing the climate policies coming out of Europe. The great rhetoric, the incredible corruption, legal corruption, and the total lack of any teeth or ability to do anything. And right now, this situation with the internet is very scary. The people who are making decisions are politically well connected, but they don't understand anything about the internet. I thought it was bad when they were making climate decisions without knowing about climate. But what these guys know about the internet is much less than what they know about climate. So I'm worried. But we got a war going on, something else to worry about.
Yeah. Well, if you can take your pick of what to worry about, because we have enough to go around this week. And I've got all I can handle, so you guys can take the rest, what's left over. Okay?
I'd just like to say that if anybody wants to drop me a line at ccnr@web.ca, the Canadian Coalition for Nuclear Responsibility, I'll be glad to send you some more information on the military uses of tritium.
Gordon, I would invite you to post that on the website.
Yeah, I just posted. I have a whole section called Troubles with Tritium.
Okay, is it on our website to save the
It's
world?
on our website, the CCNR
Well, post
website.
it on our website too. You know, this, I should wind up by saying that, you know, we have recorded this whole 2-hour session, and I will spend another couple of hours editing it and putting some music and things like that on. And then sometime this evening, I will put it on as the most recent forum in our series on the website. It's called tosavetheworld.ca. You can go there, and by tomorrow anyway, it should be available so you can watch yourself, everything that we've recorded here. You can share it with other people. You can listen to it as a podcast, an audio podcast. You won't be able to read it right away as a transcript, but maybe in time we'll put up a transcript too. And then at the bottom of the page, there's a little blue button that you can click that says click here to comment. And it will take you someplace else where you can post your own ideas or comments. And you can even argue with each other. So I would suggest, Gordon, that you go to the bottom of the page tomorrow and click on it and post your anything you want there. And everybody give him time to get it up. And then maybe you should go look at it. All right. And certainly give him a phone call or an email call if you have things else that you want to talk about on that. Fair enough?
Good enough.
All right. Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Meta.
Everybody.
Many thanks.
All right.
everybody.
Very good. Looking forward to a month from today. That is not a month from today, but the last Sunday in November. We'll get back together.
In
So
4 weeks.
carry on, folks. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Project Save the World produces these forums. This is episode number 572. You can watch them or listen to them as audio podcasts on our website, tosavetheworld.ca. You can share information there also about 6 global issues. To find a particular talk show, enter its title or episode number in the search bar, or the name of one of the guest speakers, or you can just use the scroll bar to see the whole list of shows. Project Save the World also produces a quarterly online publication, Peace Magazine. You can subscribe for $20 Canadian per year. Just go to pressreader.com on your browser, and in the search bar, enter the word peace. You'll see buttons to click to subscribe.